So Don Cherry has finally broken his silence over what ended up happening on Coach's Corner this past Saturday. He's given a few interviews since, but he was giving one interview to News Talk 1010. He ended up going on Tucker Carlson. He's spoken to a few different people. But I want to get into more of this. This is the first interview he ended up giving on News Talk 1010 with Barb DiGiulio. And this is where he kind of explains what was going through his head at the time, what ended up happening in the aftermath of him using the "you" people and talking about the Poppy situation, as well as the reactions that he ended up receiving from a lot of the people that were involved with the broadcast, those who were on the staff, though hit Ron MacLean and them. So I want to get into this interview real quick, and then we're going to move on to a couple different things involving Don Cherry. We're going to show CBC release some of his quote-unquote controversial statements he's made over the years. There was CTV's The Social that ended up talking about it and some of the things that were said on there. And then I just want to touch on a very quick story from the Bloc Québécois in Alberta. So not too long of a video, but first we're going to get into this here. Let me just find the right position.
That's the way it is.
It keeps resetting itself on me.
So earlier...
Shield.
So, yes, a lot of people are talking about the fact that, a lot of Canadians are not wearing poppies. And a lot of people said when you said that, they kind of went, I'm not wearing my poppy. I didn't get a poppy. People are taking exception to the fact that it was you people come to this country.
Yeah, and it could have been anybody. It could have been the Irish. It could have been Scotch. It could have been English. It could have been anybody. And but the people that
And that was something that I was actually been making in defense of Don Cherry because, the Twitter's been having a field day with it. There's been people on who are defending him, who are getting a lot of shit from those who think that he's a racist. And I've gotten into a few Twitter fights with a few people about this. And this is something I kept bringing up, is the fact that he never specified race when it came to this. He never specified race. He never specified religion. We have immigrants from all over the world. And I think he, at some point in this interview, I don't know if I have it, but he even says, he was talking to the whole country. And that's the thing, is that maybe he was making reference to the immigrants that ended up coming in. And I don't think he's wrong in what he said when he was talking about how they don't seem to wear a lot of poppies. But it wasn't just for them. It was for anybody who can't just shell out a few bucks for it, who can't just wear it for a few days. He was making a statement that for any people that can go through the short Remembrance Day season and not take the time to honor their veterans, not take the time to buy and wear a poppy or support the troops. So, but then this is where everyone was taken in, means that he's being racist. I mean, even the video we're going to get into, the View on the Social, CTV's The Social, they were even saying that he's a misogynist too. But I don't think they make reference to anything in particular. They just threw that in so people will throw anything in. And actually, what was kind of funny is one person I got into a Twitter war with over this. In the end, he pretty much ended up saying that, this is Canada. We're known to apologize. And Don Cherry, who spent a lot of his time in the States, he was acting very American. And this was the guy that was throwing racist and bigoted around. So the irony of it is that for a guy that was saying that Don Cherry was throwing all immigrants into the same category and being racist and bigoted to them, then threw every single American into the same category, pretty much calling them racist and bigoted. So I thought that was a little ironic. But back to the interview.
That would take offensive to it are the ones that would indonate. Is that how they say it? I forget how they said it. But anyhow, that Sportsnet, but the guys that are for me, with the diabetes and the two kids and remembrance of that.
He's just making reference to something he said earlier in the interview, where he's talking about some of the charitable work he's done for people with diabetes and so on.
I'm happy, but then there's nothing I can do. Telling you, guys that are for me, with the diabetes and the two kids and and remembrance of that, they wouldn't say a word. But that's the way life is like that, and I'm not whining about it. I'm just telling you that's the way I feel, and I still feel that everybody in this country that likes our way of life, these beautiful people gave their lives in their 20s and in their teens for our way of life. They should wear a poppy, and if that's offensive, then there's nothing I can do about it. That's the way I feel, and I'm not changing, and I don't regret a thing.
Don, what happened after the show? Did anybody say anything? Did it suddenly become a thing, or did that not happen till Sunday?
No, I never knew. I never knew anything about it. Nobody said a word. Nobody, nothing at all. It was Sunday then I found out about. Well, I found out about it. Today I guess. Well, Sunday I knew they were unhappy, but today was the day they lowered the boom. So no, nobody said a word, but. That's the way it goes, Barb. You've been in the business a long time, and don't get carried away too much because you never know what can happen to you.
So that was always something that I found particularly interesting about this story, is the fact that for such a great outrage, nobody said anything on staff there. Ron MacLean didn't say anything about what he ended up saying, although Ron MacLean came out the next day and apologized for what Don Cherry said, and pretty much said that he should have spoken up in that time. Although Ron MacLean has not had a spine for 10 fucking years. If you've watched him on Coach's Corner with Don Cherry, Ron MacLean can't get a word in, and I get it that Don Cherry talks a lot, but that's because he lets himself be walked over. He lets himself get walked over by Cherry for the last 10 years on Coach's Corner, and he's letting himself be walked over once again. And then he caved into the pressure of the people that were outraged. Instead of standing beside his co-host for almost 40 years, I guess it is. I think they were about 38 years into the Coach's Corner broadcast. Don Cherry had gone to bat for Ron MacLean in the past, and now Ron MacLean, the time that Cherry needs it the most, he couldn't even be bothered with that. These are two men who have more than enough money to survive. And this should have been something that Ron MacLean was ready to live or die beside Cherry and say, like, hey, you know what? Cherry goes, I go. At least that's what friends are supposed to do for each other. Although Cherry ended up saying that, he's disappointed in Ron, but he doesn't actually hold any ill will. Ron is still his friend. That's fine. But Sportsnet didn't say anything to him. I mean, if this was such a controversy at the time, you figured that they would have made a statement the same day or has spoken to Cherry the exact same day and be like, hey, what did you just say? And, that's inappropriate. But they didn't end up doing it. Sportsnet, their president, Ron MacLean, they all caved to the pressure that was being put onto Cherry. And now there's the claim that the Canadian Broadcast Standards Association ended up having their they were so filled with complaints about Cherry that the website crashed. I gotta admit, I'm skeptical of that because I can't imagine that many people were really freaking out over what he said. I get the feeling that it was more just a few vocal people that were actually speaking out. So I really do question that if that's the case. I've always had this feeling that Sportsnet and I felt that a lot of people have wanted Cherry gone because he's a loudmouth, because he speaks his mind, because he's not afraid of controversy. Not exactly the type of person that you want around these days. And the fact that he is a conservative, or at least has conservative leanings. I don't think I've actually heard him come out and say that, but this was a guy that was at Mayor Rob Ford's christening, swearing into office, and he's spoken out against the left-wing loonies or cuckaloos. I think that's the word he uses, cuckaloos, before. That he's not the type of person that they want around, and he's popular. So I get the feeling that they wanted him gone for some time. So let's just quickly finish up what Elsie had to say, and then we'll move on.
About it.
You know what? It was just about 6 years. Yeah. What do you think I'm here?
What, like you mean on the sports thing?
Yeah. So you know what? It was just nothing. There was not an issue that happened, but yeah, I was just shown the door one day, and so it can happen. But I have to ask you: did Sportsnet, would they have allowed you to stay on if you agreed to apologize? That's sort of what everybody's saying.
Well, if I had gone on and said a few things and done a few things, I definitely would have been back. There's no doubt about it. But I think the people, if I had to come back as a simp, or not come back as myself, I'd have been disappointed in myself. I'm a little disappointed now, and I'm not feeling too good right now. But I would have been feeling a lot worse if I had have knuckle under and done things that they wanted me to do in that, and not be myself on television. And what's the sense? If you're not going to be yourself on television, what's the sense of doing it? And I saw your number here, and I had to give you.
And that is why I respect Cherry for what he did. The fact that he didn't apologize, because despite what they're saying, he could have apologized and come back. That may have lasted for a broadcast, maybe two, but he was going to be gone. Undoubtedly was going to be gone for what happened and for the quote-unquote amount of outrage that they were receiving, that these people wanted him gone. And I get the feeling that had he apologized, he would have lost all credibility because he would have caved in. This is something that people have said for a long time, and they're right. Never apologize to these people. Never apologize, because it doesn't get you anything. You turn your back on your principles, on what you're talking about. You can't stand by your word, and you're going to lose everything anyway. So at least go out. It's never enough, because the apology is blood in the water. If they can get you to apologize, they're like sharks. That's just going to attract them even more to you, and they're going to demand more and more from you until there's nothing left of you. You're just a hollow person of who you once were, and that's what would have happened to Cherry had he come back, had he apologized, had he caved. But now he's going out like a man, and I respect him for that. I mean, again, I suppose it's different than what a lot of the average people have to deal with, because the guy's 85. I mean, like it or not, he ain't going to be around for much longer, and he's made a lot of money in his career. So it's not like he really has to work. He does this because he enjoys the game. And I mean, since he's also been given the Russians have offered him a job. I'm not sure if it was for the actual Russian league or whether it was for a Russian team where he was, quote, allowed to say whatever he wants. He might take it, he might not. I kind of only saw the story in passing, but this is why I respect Cherry for not caving, for sticking by his word, because he's been a guy who's been passionate about trying to help out veterans, trying to help those who have served. He's been like this for years, if decades, maybe even longer. So if he had caved, if he had apologized, he would have been turning his back on his principles, but he didn't do that, and I respect him for that. So this was released by the CBC, and it's Don Cherry's comments are the latest chapter of controversial broadcasting career. And again, for a while there, the hashtag Don Cherry is right was trending in Canada. I think that was on Sunday. That was like Sunday, Monday or so, when everything was happening when the original controversy was breaking out. And so they decided to release this. As actually, I guess it was on November 11th. But again, you look through his most controversial comments, and he's still right, because that's the other hashtag that came up was Don Cherry is right. And he is right on a lot of what he says, regardless whether it's perceived as controversial or not. So we're going to skip down to what were probably my favorites. So January 24th, 2004, Cherry went on a rant about visitors in the NHL, which prompted the commentator to say that the protective gear was worn by visors. Talking about visors, says the protective gear was worn by wimps and usually sported by Europeans and French guys. The comments were taken as a slur against Francophone Canadians, touch off by criticism of numerous federal politicians, and forced the CBC to temporarily implement a 7-second tape delay on his segment. Well, he ain't exactly wrong when he talks about his European and French guys. I just love how that's the example that he ended up pulling out. December 7th, 2010. Wearing a garnished pink suit, Cherry crashed Rob Ford's inauguration as mayor of Toronto with zeal that seemed to be a surprise even for Ford. Cherry was invited by Ford to attend the ceremony and put the chains of office around Ford's neck. And to this day, a little off topic, but to this day, my favorite line by Rob Ford, and probably yours too, is still this.
It says that I wanted to eat her pussy. I've never said that in my life tour. I would never do that. I'm happily married. I've got more than enough to eat at home.
I just figured since we're talking about Rob Ford, I had to bring that up. Moving on. He took the opportunity to deliver a 3-minute tirade in front of City Council, calling bicycle riders pinkos and celebrating Ford's election with the phrase, "Put that in your pipe, you left-wing kooks." On April 28, 2013, Cherry said he was against women reporters being allowed in the NHL dressing room. Quote, "I remember the first time it happened to me," Cherry said. "Guys were walking around naked and I hear this woman's voice. I turn around and she's asking me about the power play. I say, 'Let's go outside.' And she says, 'I'm not embarrassed.' I said, 'I am.' Several women reporters and the Association for Women in Sports Media rebuked Cherry for his stance." Now, this one shouldn't be a controversy because, well, here's a good example. Imagine it the other way around. Imagine a female sports team and a male reporter walks in when a bunch of women are walking around naked. What do you think the reaction to that would be? It actually makes complete sense. See, the thing is, he's not talking about that women reporters shouldn't be allowed to report on the NHL. He's saying they should be allowed in the dressing rooms. I mean, to this day, I still play hockey. I mean, I think there's been a video or two where I've had my goalie equipment in the background when it's air drying. But I play in a beer league. And yeah, guys get naked, guys take showers and shit, whatever. We're all fucking guys. But that's a different story when you have women walking into the dressing room. And yeah, I'm sure a lot of guys probably wouldn't just walk around with their dicks flapping around if that was the case. And I'm seriously waiting. I think it's going to happen that in one situation, there's going to be a female reporter who walked into a male dressing room, sees guys walking around naked, and tries to make some claim of sexual harassment or something. Or if like a guy's naked there and makes a comment or like sort of hitting on her or something, there's going to be a claim of sexual harassment by a female sports reporter in a male dressing room when the team is walking around naked. I bet you that. I bet you that. February 3rd, 2018. Citing cold weather during winter, Cherry sounded off against those looking to combat climate change during the segment of Coach's Corner. Cherry asked McLean if he and his, quote, left-wing pinko friends, quote, end quote, could explain their concerns over rising global temperatures while Toronto was experiencing a midwinter cold snap. Quote, "I'm just asking you, the cuckaloos are always saying there are warming trends," end quote, said Cherry. "We're freezing to death." And again, Cherry's not exactly wrong. As much as they want to claim the science is settled, there's a lot of dispute on that. I mean, even recently when there was that 11,000 scientists that were signed on to say that we need to combat climate change now, so there was literally the name Mickey Mouse on that list. The guy who created the hockey stick graph, the one that is used by a lot of climate scientists to show that we're in a warming trend right now, how everything is, how our climate is spiraling out of control. He lost a court case. There was he got challenged in court about how he collected his data. He lost that court case. So he's not exactly wrong. And I was a guy that was a huge believer in climate change. Put it this way. When I was like 18, 19 or something like that, my plan was to write a book that was called How Our Fathers Left Us to Die. And it was going to be about how they did nothing for climate change. And then my generation and my kids' generation were going to die because they did nothing. But you know what? The more and more this debate has gone on, the more and more crap has been called out. The more and more lies have been called out. I mean, the science is not even close to being settled. All right. Now, something else that needs to be brought up is that Cherry's controversy was about him using the term "you people," which people say is a racist term. You know, you do it in reference when you're about to say something insulting to black people or Muslims or something. You say, "you people, blah, 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 blah." Well, Cherry, this is one thing I always thought when this controversy was going on, is like, I've heard him use the term "you people" a lot in the past when I've watched Coach's Corner. And here's just an example of where he uses it just generically. It's just what he says. He says, "you people." He uses it a lot if you go watch his old Rock'em Sock'em videos. Back like, he still does, I'm pretty sure he still does them to this day, but he changed the name to Don Cherry, whatever, 24. Where every year he puts together the highlights of the best goals, the best saves, the best fights in hockey. But anyway, here's an example.
You people out there, if you're listening and you're doing it, and you should get involved in this too. Because what they want to do, they want to take when our guys, when they come back, they need the jobs. Everybody needs jobs. They want to put them in the construction business. So they're going to train them. So you people should get involved. I'm going to be involved. Helmets, the hard hats, the greatest people in the world next to our troops. So come on, get involved in this. It's the Canadian way.
So there's just one example, but you can go back and broadcast and you can find countless examples of him using the term "you people" where he doesn't mean it in an offensive or racist way. So now we get into it. This is from CTV's The Social. And we have 3 women here, which, this one over second from the left is questionable if she's a woman. Seriously, she looks like a tranny to me. But 3 women who, from the looks of it, have never played a sport in their life. And I think at least 2 of them do say that they don't play sports. They're not involved in any hockey culture or anything like that, which I maybe that doesn't really mean anything when we're talking about what Cherry ended up saying, because he wasn't really talking about sports. But I've always found it quite weird when you have sportscasters talking about sports who never play sports. But then what we're really looking for is Jess Allen, and this is woman in the green shirt here, and what she ends up saying.
I think it struck a nerve because I'm told he's a Canadian icon, and he's a symbol of the great sport of hockey, which is the sport that unites us across this country. And that narrative is the one that strikes a nerve with me, because I don't worship at the altar of hockey. I never have. And maybe it's because of where I grew up, but and going to a couple different universities, there's a certain type of person in my mind, in my experience, who does. And they all tended to be white boys who weren't, let's say, very nice. They were not generally thoughtful. They were often bullies. Their parents were able to afford to put them, spend $5,000 a year on minor hockey instead of $5,000 is a lot of money. You could do other things besides spending your time in an arena. You can go on a trip and learn about the world, see other things, eh? The place is a...
So really, we'll finish this up in just a second, but the controversy is what she ended up saying there. How she says they're white boys, and then pretty much goes into a toxic masculinity rant there, and a lot of people are not happy with it. A lot of people are not happy with it. Well, for one reason, if you want an example between Cherry and Jess Allen, who race baited, she race baited. Cherry said nothing about race or religion. Sure, he was talking about immigrants, but we have immigrants from all over the world, all race, colors, creeds, religions. But Cherry was talking, might have been talking about them, but he was also talking about people that don't wear poppies. She explicitly singled out one race, and regardless if she's white, that doesn't matter to me. Between the two, she's the one who's race baiting. And as you can actually see here, just off to the right, since I'm on Twitter, the hashtag #FireJessAllen is trending right now, actually. And I'm going to get into that in just a minute. Yeah, you know what? I'll let Don Cherry in his own words say it.
And it's always a woman yapping away there.
When I came across that clip, I thought this was perfect for this situation. What's going on? So let's quickly finish it up and we'll get into it a little bit more.
The world is a big place, maybe get out of that bubble. And for me, Don Cherry is the walking and talking representative of that type. And he's the type of person that now people want to like, and I know he's done some good things, but at the same time, when someone good is also able to make fun.
He's done more, I'm guaranteeing you, he's done more good for other people than Jess Allen ever has in her life. And the fact that she's trying to criticize people for playing a sport, while I see professional sports in some way as a distraction in these days, not as much as others, because, I hear people using the term, like, sports ball, I feel like it's a distraction for people in the ways that, like, if they spend all their time just watching sports and knows every statistic about every player, that I could see it as a distraction. But for most people, the sport is a relaxing thing, and it is for me too. Whenever I watch hockey or any other sport, that's the whole point of it. It's just a time to relax, maybe drink a beer, enjoy the game. And if you're playing a game, it's activity number one, which is, I don't know why she's trying to chastise people for getting active. In today's day and age, when obesity is such a big problem, why the hell would she chastise kids from being active, playing a sport that requires them to move, build up their skill, learn teamwork? These are all important when it comes to living your life. Sure, there's plenty of assholes that play sports. There's plenty of assholes who don't play sports. But most of the time, and again, I've played hockey since I was like 8 or 9 years old. Yeah, you give yourself a hard time, and there's a lot of competition, competitiveness, but it's some of the best times in the world as well. And you give each other a hard time because you're breaking each other's balls. But I don't think she gets that, because that's what it is for a lot of guys. Anybody else who plays sports out there, am I wrong in what I'm saying? I mean, seriously, let me know below. But you go out there, you do it because you enjoy the game. You do it and you break each other's balls because it's all in good fun. You build up great friendships through the sports that you play. You learn to win and lose with dignity, at least most people do. Of course, not everybody does. You learned a lot about both teamwork and working independently, especially like a sport like hockey. Teamwork is so important, but there are those times where you got to do it all by yourself. So it teaches you the value of being able to work as a team, work independently, all skills that are important for later on in life. But she's chastising these people. And yeah, parents spend, I don't know if it's $5,000 every single year on hockey, because I don't think I ever had that discussion with my parents about how much the cost was. But you really think that if you're not putting your kids into sport, that people are traveling the world all the time? It doesn't work that way. It really doesn't. If you got raised in sort of your average middle class family, you did go on vacations from time to time and get out of the country, go to different places. But it didn't happen every single year. It didn't happen nearly as frequently as Jess Allen wants people to believe.
Fun of people who believe in climate science, who's also, but at the same time, when someone good is also able to make fun of people who believe in climate science, who's also able to be like, whether he's charming or not, but he's still a bigot and a misogynist, when you're, to have those two things, like, I dismiss that.
And it's always a woman yapping away there.
One more time, Don.
And it's always a woman yapping away there.
There we go. So that's what she ended up saying. And before we get into the fire Jess Allen thing, I want to just use this, which is ironic. We're not going to watch the whole video because it kind of spirals into different... you'll see.
What he did say was those people. And
screw it, we'll just watch the whole thing. It's 44 seconds.
What he did say was those people. And anybody who's had like a grandfather in their life or a weird uncle has heard references to those people. And those people are always a certain type of people. They have a certain type of skin color. Everyone knows the subtext of...
I just want to notice that. I didn't notice it the first time. She's giving her explanation. She says they have a certain type of skin color and looks over at the black woman like, did I do good?
always a certain type of people. They have a certain type of skin color. Everyone knows the subtext of what those people mean, and that's what he said.
A few moments later.
Also, isn't hockey supposed to be something, actually all sports, the idea, and again, this is the non-sporto, I thought you people who are into sports, you people.
How dare you!
So once again, just going back to what I said at the beginning, because I guess it did have a little more importance to what I was talking about, is that you have a group of people, a group of women, who've never played a sport, telling us, people who play sports, what to believe, how you should act, what you should think about those sports. They can't leave anything alone, can they? Nothing is sacred to people such as this. Nothing is sacred. They always gotta talk about something they don't frickin' understand. Because if you don't play a sport, then you'll never truly understand all the things I was talking about just a minute ago. Camaraderie, team building exercises, the thrill of the game, the thrill of winning, the crushing feeling you get at losing the big game. I mean, I've felt the thrill of victory and the crushing defeat in a big game more times than I can count. You know, I've been there with the teams where you've gone into tournaments, you've gotten to the finals, and then you lose by one freaking goal, sometimes at the very end of the game, seconds left, and the other team scores that goal that wins it. There is not a worse feeling than that, and there's not a better feeling than being the team that scored that winning goal in the big game just seconds away from the third period buzzer sounding. But they're going to lecture us on how to feel about that. Now, in concern of the Fire Jess Allen hashtag that is trending now in Canada, it's a response to the fact that these people like Jess Allen, that people like Jess Allen and CTV The Social and many other people out there were happy and advocating for Don Cherry to lose his job. Let's not forget, the hashtag Fire Don Cherry was trending in Canada just a few days ago, before he officially lost his job. So it's a response to that. The fact that she actually race baited more than Don Cherry ever did with what he said. Don Cherry said, you people, you come here, you know, you want our way of life? Put on a poppy. It's the least you can do. Jess Allen literally says white boys, which is not exactly an offensive term, but she's the one who brings up race. But what I don't like about this is that I'm seeing right-wing Twitter go down the exact same path that left-wing Twitter was taking just a few days ago. They're calling for censorship. They're calling for deplatforming. They're not standing up for the principles of free speech and free expression. Go ahead and criticize her as much as you want. But if you are going to advocate that she be fired from her job because of what she said about Don Cherry, about what she said about white boys and all that, then you're not taking a principled stance. And that's something, honestly, since the election, but even leading up to the election, I've noticed that right-wing Twitter, at least in Canada, has taken a big dive on, is having principled stance. Standing up for those that you don't agree with, you don't even like, but that's because that's what you believe in, what you're supposed to live your life by. I don't like Jess Allen any more than the rest of you. But how could I sit here and say and rail against the cancel culture, the deplatforming, censorship, say I'm pro free speech, free expression, let me say what I want to say. You know, you can criticize me, but don't come after my life and my job if I'm going to advocate that she be fired for using the exact same freedom. And I think anybody advocating for that, you should really rethink your position. If you're not going to rethink your position on Fire Jess Allen, then you really need to reanalyze what your principles are. Because you're just doing exactly what left-wing Twitter's doing, what the liberals advocate for, and it's kind of proving that conservatives are just liberals that are 5 years behind the trend. And I'll admit, that's actually a term I just heard recently, but I really liked it. Because I kind of heard it when I was, someone asked Charlie Kirk that question, the whole Groyper thing that's going on, which people are covering it. I don't really feel like covering it, but people are covering it there in the States. But if we are now going to take the route, if right-wingers and right-wing Twitter is going to take the route of deplatforming, calling everybody racist and bigoted, then you're just doing the same thing. And at the end of the day, as this goes farther and farther along, we're just going to have a bunch of extremely far lefties who think they're liberal, and center-left people center-left liberals who think they're conservative arguing with each other. And there's not going to be a right wing in Canada anymore. So I don't agree, nor do I condone with this hashtag Fire Jess Allen. All right. Last thing I want to get into before we sign off here is this here. Bloc leader YF Blanchet. I'm not actually sure. What's his name? Hold on. Yves F. Blanchet. On advice for those seeking more independence in the West. Quote, if they were attempting to create a green state in Western Canada, I might be tempted to help them. If they are trying to create an oil state, they cannot expect any help from us.
A green state in Western.
What's your advice to people in Alberta and Saskatchewan who are looking more inside? Well, given that Quebec has already been through this discussion, and even though as the leader of the Bloc Québécois, sovereignty is not
if they were attempting to create a green state in Western Canada, I might be tempted to help them. If they are trying to create an oil state in Western Canada, they cannot expect any help from us.
But in terms of advice, should they stop looking? Should they stop looking inside? Should they? You are looking like somebody who is trying to be more collaborative with the rest of the country as the leader of the Bloc Québécois. Are you trying to lead by example now to all of the other premiers as well? Show them that maybe we need to be more collaborative here rather than be more insular.
I doubt it, because I still believe that Quebec will do better when it becomes a country. So I'm not the one that will fight to have a nice, beautiful, and united Canada. But I will...
Well, there's their stance. One of the many, many, many reasons I do not like Quebec. He doesn't care about the unity of Canada, yet they want as much special treatment from Canada as they can possibly get. That's just great, coming from a federal party leader. And I also think it's funny how he's saying that if they attempt to create a green state in Western Canada, they might be tempted to help. But trying to create an oil state, they cannot expect any help from us. Quebecers, Ontario's guilty of this too, but Quebecers are some of the biggest consumers of fossil fuel in the country. So here they are trying to lecture Alberta about how they can't have an oil state. They can't invest in their tar sands. They need to create a green state. They need to get all the fossil fuels. Well, couple things. A lot of the people out in places like Alberta don't live in like Calgary or Edmonton. They actually live sort of in rural towns and stuff. Have you ever tried to drive on a rural street after a giant snowfall in an electric vehicle? It doesn't work. It doesn't freaking work. But on top of that, this is the equivalent of you giving money to help out your friend because, they never have money. They're always broke. They're always asking for you to pay for this, pay for that, pay for this. And then them saying that you have to do what I want if you want me to help you. Bitch, I've given you how much money over the years, and this is the shit you're going to pull on me? Alberta never asked for help from Quebec. Alberta doesn't get any help from Quebec. In fact, Quebec is constantly standing in the way of Alberta and their tar sands while taking on billions of dollars every single year. And this cocksucker has the audacity to say that if they do what we want, we might be tempted to help them. Thanks, buddy. Thanks a lot. You know, this is why I've at least said, not that I support it, but I've always said that I understand the Western separation movement a lot more than I understand the Quebec separatist movement. Because Quebec are pissy little whiny bitches that are just pissed off the fact they lost the battle on the Plains of Abraham some 200 years ago and want to be seen as these special types of people. We're our own independent people. We have our own independent culture. It ain't that fucking different. You know what? France and England, not that far apart. Different languages, not an extremely different culture, but they want to act like it's the goddamn Europeans and fucking Asians or the Muslims or something like that are just completely different. It's not that fucking different. But Alberta has actually at least been alienated for some time. And their way of life has been threatened by Quebec for some time while they continue to give them money. Now, I don't support the Wexit movement for the sole fact that I'm not going to support separatists. People that want to break away from this country, I don't like that. But I understand why they feel that way. And at least if they got some movement on the Wexit, if they got some movement on the Wexit movement, I didn't want to use the word movement twice. If they got some movement with it, then at least it would give them some bargaining chips at the table. But Quebec, when the money dries up, they're going to be sitting there with their dick in their hand wondering what the hell happened. Quebec just posted a surplus this year. And that surplus came from Alberta. It's actually kind of at the point where, and I would agree with this, and I'd vote in favor of this, the rest of Canada should just vote if we want Quebec in Canada. Fuck if they want to stay. Let's vote them out. So that was just one thing extra I wanted to add into everything. And holy shit, I went a long time. I'm just looking right now. I'm getting close to the 45-minute mark. I did not mean to go this long, but I guess I did. All right. Well, thank you all for joining me on the channel today. And I'll be back soon with another video. And support Don Cherry.